Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Clarkspective. For more than a century, there has been an unwritten rule in professional sports. The player is not as big as the league. Always. The gavel is held by the commissioner. The shield defends itself. And that truth is immediately brought home to anyone who grows too large, too loud, or too strong. The biggest personalities in basketball history have experienced it. Icons, legends, and generational talents who believed they were untouchable have all experienced it. Every time, the institution prevails. However, that rule was recently broken. Furthermore, the individual who broke it doesn't even have 5 years of work experience. Caitlin Clark is her name. Furthermore, the events that have transpired within the WNBA during the past 18 months go beyond simple athletics. It's a full-scale power transfer. The kind that occurs just once or twice every generation. The kind in which an elderly guard awakens one morning to discover that they are no longer in command with a chilly, depressing feeling. If you appreciate this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 73% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's free and only takes a second, but it means the world to us. So, did you subscribe already? Great. Thank you so much for your support. Now, back to the video. The kind where a commissioner who believed she was in charge of a league finds herself in charge of damage management for a predicament she brought about. WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert is reportedly enraged behind closed doors. Not angry, not worried, not frustrated. Furthermore, it is evident that other events contributed to the explosion when you look back at how this moment came to be. It was the outcome of numerous miscalculations, political setbacks, and an unyielding refusal to accept what was right in front of her. A powder keg that had been accumulating for more than a year was merely ignited by the NBC contract. This is the tale of how one player outgrew the organization and how the organization provided her with the means to do so. First and foremost, you must comprehend the true meaning of the NBC agreement, as the headline does not convey the whole picture. On paper, a record-breaking 11-year media rights deal worth more than $2.2 billion was obtained by the WNBA. In the context of women's professional basketball, the figure truly is remarkable. Commissioner Engelbert may declare the league's historic triumph while standing at a podium. She could present it as the result of decades of development, of creating something out of nothing, and of finally making the sports media take women's basketball seriously. However, as soon as you see what NBC actually bought, that framing begins to crumble. They did not purchase the WNBA for $2.2 billion. The Caitlin Clark experience cost them $2.2 billion. Everyone in the industry is aware that there is a big gap between those two items. According to reports making the rounds in the sports media industry, Caitlin Clark-focused programming is the foundation of NBC's internal content strategy. The network is uninterested in the league's traditional marketing strategy, which places a strong emphasis on teamwork, equal visibility, and the notion that each roster space has equal value. It didn't. NBC is interested in ratings. Additionally, the ratings data is not nuanced. One player, one jersey, and one name are indicated. Thus, NBC carried out the actions of billion-dollar media corporations. After purchasing the rights, they declared their priorities. They didn't request authorization. They didn't compromise on the commissioner's wishes. They analyzed the data, ascertained the audience's location, and adjusted their approach accordingly. They essentially circumvented Cathy Engelbert's control over her own goods by doing this. She is unable to insist that NBC change their focus to the New York Liberty over the phone. She is unable to give them instructions to distribute their coverage evenly around the roster. The network took control of the agenda as soon as the contract was signed. Additionally, the number 22 appears in the middle of each frame on the agenda. That is not a collaboration for a commissioner who has worked for years to present the WNBA as a team effort. That is a hostile reorganization of what she has put forth. She discovered far too late that she had given the keys to people who had no interest in maintaining her vision, which is directly responsible for the tension that has allegedly exploded behind closed doors. This is where the narrative becomes even more illuminating, though. Because the NBC incident wasn't isolated. It occurred at the same time as another incident that rocked the WNBA establishment. A moment that, in certain respects, conveyed the tale far more effectively than any media agreement could. Unrivaled is a brand new league that debuted earlier this year. Unrivaled was founded by Brianna Stewart and Alyssa Thomas to provide top WNBA players with a well-known, lucrative off-season option. The idea was immediately credible since it had real support, substantial funding, and a list of well-known figures. However, the league also faced a particular issue. To go from a promising company to a cultural phenomenon, Unrivaled needed one name above all others in a sports landscape increasingly dominated by star power and unique tales. They used all of their resources to pursue Caitlin Clark. They allegedly made an offer that wasn't a typical contract. It was the kind of bundle you put together in an attempt to hire someone who could make or break your entire business. A claimed compensation of more than $1 million. Substantial performance incentives and equity within the league itself. It was the kind of bargain you don't turn down by any standard measure. It was designed to give the impression that refusal was illogical. Nevertheless, Caitlin Clark declined. That decision sent shockwaves through the WNBA community. Because it may appear haughty to turn down millions of dollars and the opportunity to play with the top personalities in the sport. However, if you read it more closely, a totally different image appears. Clark delivered a message to every player, executive, media personality, and sponsor who was watching as he left Unrivaled. Their platform is not necessary for her. She can verify her brand without their money. Outside the current building, she is creating something completely original. Additionally, she has sufficient clout to act without seeking consent from anyone. That rejection was more than just a hassle for Cathy Engelbert. It was a proclamation. Clark was informing the establishment that there were other tables in the room except the one they were providing her a seat at. And it's precisely the kind of thing that keeps a commissioner up at night. That degree of independence from a player who hasn't even finished 2 full professional seasons. You need to look past the NBC agreement to completely see why Engelbert's annoyance is said to have reached a breaking point. You have to go back to the time the commissioner made the incorrect decision when she had the opportunity to define her connection with the most significant player in the league's history. Something unsettling occurred on courts throughout the league during Caitlin Clark's debut campaign. Physical activity that was not limited to competitive basketball. Fans watching at home and in arenas reacted instantly to targeted contact and blatant fouls. Moments that, to a large segment of the audience, appeared more like a concerted attempt to convey a message to the newcomer than hard-nosed defense. The commissioner's office did nothing but observe. It was no coincidence that there was silence. According to a number of stories at the time, Engelbert was hesitant to take a tough stance against seasoned players out of fear that it would damage her rapport with the league's established core. She was attempting to oversee 2 audiences at once. The players who had been in the WNBA for years and the new generation of fans who had learned about it through Clark disliked the idea that one rookie was surpassing everything they had established. So she remained silent. She allowed things to unfold. The interview then took place. When questioned directly about the toxic environment that surrounded Clark, the harsh play, the conflicts between players and fans, and the general pall of negativity that had descended upon the league, Engelbert responded in a way that quickly gained notoriety. She likened the circumstance to the rivalry between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. She discussed how intense competition creates tension and how viewing is influenced by that tension. She presented what many perceived as deliberate animosity as a normal consequence of healthy rivalry. The reaction was disastrous. WNBA PA players resisted. Engelbert was fiercely attacked by Caitlin Clark's fan base. Commentators in the sports media who had been following the story described it as evasive at worst and tone-deaf at best. Shortly later, the commissioner was compelled to issue a public apology, but the harm to his reputation had already been done. She had demonstrated to Caitlin Clark and the rest of the world that the person ostensibly responsible for safeguarding the league's players would not defend its most well-known star when it counted most. NBC entered the void left by that failure. This story has a particular chapter that receives less attention than it deserves, despite the fact that it might be the most important part of the whole. Snorts. Caitlin Clark was left off the roster when the U.S. Olympic basketball squad was assembled for the Paris Games last summer. The decision was taken by the selection committee. They gave basketball as an explanation. They discussed fit, experience, and the breadth of talent already in existence. On the surface, it was portrayed as a challenging but justifiable choice made by experts in the game. It was openly supported by Cathy Engelbert. One of the most talked about subjects in women's athletics was what transpired next. According to reports, NBC, which had the rights to broadcast the Olympics, was furious. Not just disappointed, furious. Because NBC's data managers were aware of anything that the selection committee either failed to notice or decided to overlook. Women's basketball viewing records could have lasted for decades if Caitlin Clark had been on that Olympic squad. A Clark-led Olympic run alone would have generated enormous advertising revenue. Her exclusion from the team was more than just a basketball choice made by the establishment. They made a poor financial decision. When a network spends billions of dollars on a league and then observes that league's establishment intentionally avoids maximizing the worth of its biggest player, the network does not forget, which is why the NBC agreement that followed needs to be partially understood through that lens. There is more to NBC's intense coverage of the WNBA than just natural passion. It has a correctional component. A statement that reads, "The old guard cost us money once. We will not allow it to happen again." The commissioner is currently dealing with the fallout from a resentment harbored by a media partner who has far more financial clout than her office. A distinct kind of struggle was taking place in the public domain, while the institutional shortcomings were mounting at the commissioner level. Additionally, it demonstrated how exposed the WNBA establishment had become. Hall of Famer Sheryl Swoopes used her position to undermine Caitlin Clark's reputation for months. She doubted the validity of Clark's influence. To make Clark's numbers appear less spectacular, she modified comparisons. Her purposeful refusal to mention Clark's name on air on multiple occasions caught the attention of viewers right away. In a way that went beyond typical sports analysis, the commentary was constant, sharp, and intimate. Then, Swoopes was taken off the job prior to a nationally televised game where she was supposed to work the broadcast booth. If network executives had called a press conference, their message would have been much clearer. Because her remarks were seen as a danger to the product, Sheryl Swoopes, a true legend in women's basketball, was excluded. And Caitlin Clark was the product, according to the network. When the NBC contract arrived, Diana Taurasi and others who had spent months openly downplaying Clark's impact on the league's expansion were forced to face reality. The WNBA was not receiving billions of dollars because of what they had developed during the preceding 10 years. One guy who had been in the league for less than 2 seasons was the reason they were pouring in. The Swoopes scenario put Cathy Engelbert in a difficult dilemma. She owes the league's legacy players a duty. She has connections to veterans who have supported the WNBA during years of financial hardship and public disinterest. However, her media partners were now establishing strict guidelines about who could and could not criticize the player who was driving their investment. She had to decide whether to uphold the culture she inherited or appease the partners who were funding the league's advancement. There isn't a version of that decision where everyone is satisfied when they leave the table. When the politics, characters, and conflicting narratives are removed, what's left is a financial reality so stark that it overshadows all other aspects of the narrative. The WNBA ran at a loss for almost 25 years. In seasons when the economics just did not work, the NBA paid subsidies to keep the league afloat. It was worthwhile to invest in, develop, and safeguard the women's game. However, it was not financially self-sustaining. That served as the starting point. Cathy Engelbert, like all previous commissioners, had to deal with that fact. Then came the freshman season for Caitlin Clark. Even arenas that had been only half full for years were fully sold out. Sales of jerseys did not increase. They skyrocketed, with some accounts claiming increases of more than 500%. Television ratings reached levels never before seen by the WNBA. Players had been asking charter flights for years on the grounds of professionalism and fundamental safety, but they were abruptly approved because there was money to support them. In just one season, the league transformed from a financially dependent organization to something akin to a running corporation. And almost all of the analysts monitoring the data indicated the same reason. According to Engelbert, the issue is that there is a great deal of vulnerability associated with this new financial reality. One person's ongoing participation, well-being, and presence are the foundation of the entire organization. The predictions fall apart if Caitlin Clark has a major injury. The entire narrative collapses if she chooses to spend a season in Europe. The NBC contract's audience expectations become unachievable if she becomes truly dissatisfied with the league's treatment of her and expresses even the slightest indication of it in public. For one player, That is an incredible amount of leverage. Every discussion between Clark's counsel and the league office is radically altered by it. The employer has the advantage in a traditional labor negotiation. From a position of structural power, the organization can regulate player expectations, enforce regulations, and set conditions. Here, that dynamic is no longer relevant. The economy is the player. Instead of managing above her, the employer is managing around her. This change has also been observed by sponsors. Businesses like Nike, Wilson, and Gatorade are making unprecedented investments in the WNBA, but Clark is the main focus of their marketing. According to reports, Nike's contract with her far exceeds her WNBA compensation, creating an intriguing and unsettling situation for the league. When it comes to financial loyalty, Clark prioritizes her sponsors over the WNBA. The league has little power to object if Nike's interests dictate that she should forego a specific league event or give priority to another commitment. According to reports, sponsors have been negotiating chances by going straight to Clark's representative, completely avoiding the commissioner's office. That is not a small procedural problem. That is the market informing the commissioner that she is no longer the crucial middleman that she once was. The people in the seats and those watching from home are another aspect of this that the numbers cannot adequately convey. There is one very distinct way that the fans who joined the WNBA alongside Caitlin Clark differ from the league's typical following. They are devoted to Clark rather than the organization. The core WNBA fanbase has a connection to the sport itself and is devoted, long-serving, and profoundly involved in the league's history and culture. They track players, teams, and narratives spanning decades and seasons. One portal served as the entry point for the new group of admirers known as the Clarkies. They just follow one individual. Although that person plays in the WNBA, it is not the object of their affection. This distinction is crucial to Engelbert's public relations strategy. She is manipulating more than just one player each time she takes a choice that seems to work against Clark's interests. Millions of admirers are waiting to see if the school is worthy of hosting their favorite athlete, and she is handling their expectations. Those fans aren't quiet either. Calls for Engelbert's resignation flood social media comment sections beneath WNBA articles at a rate that shows how strongly this audience has identified the antagonist of this narrative. From these fans' point of view, the NBC partnership is more than just a commercial statement. It is verification. It informs them that what they have been saying all along is supported by the biggest media corporations in the world. That Clark is the star, that her presence is essential to the league's value proposition, and that those who have spent the last year attempting to downplay her impact were mistaken. These supporters have become louder, more self-assured, and more demanding as a result of this validation. Additionally, Engelbert must manage a locker room full of seasoned players who feel the exact opposite way while taking on that pressure. Not only is that balancing act challenging, but it might really be unachievable. Beneath all of this is a bigger tale about what the league permitted to grow on the court, and how that culture is now returning to cause issues that NBC's cameras will make it impossible to ignore. The physical targeting of Clark during her rookie season, the inaction from the league office, the framing of fan indignation as something poisonous rather than as a genuine response to what people were watching. In a world where the WNBA was a niche product with a little television footprint, all of that produced a narrative that hardly worked. In a world where NBC is bringing millions of casual sports fans to the games for the first time, it is ineffective. The background that seasoned WNBA fans have accumulated over years is not available to the casual spectator who tunes in to watch Caitlin Clark play after seeing highlights on SportsCenter. They observe their surroundings. Additionally, they won't read a thought piece about competitive rivalries and basketball culture if all they see is a player being struck in the face by a forearm as the referee turns away. They will discuss it. Additionally, that discussion does not remain on basketball Twitter in the NBC era. The Today Show receives it. The Evening News receives it. It goes to the mainstream sports media infrastructure, which has no incentive to support the league's favored narrative. Engelbert is aware of this, which puts her in the awkward position of having to take action against the very behavior that she had previously permitted to go unchecked. The league's silence will no longer provide the veterans with the protection they once felt. The broadcast partner altered the stakes, not because the commissioner had a change of heart. The attitude in the locker room going into the upcoming season will be defined by that internal split between what the established players expected and what the new reality demands. The Commissioner's office's situation becomes much more complex when considering what the 2025 season holds. The expansion is crucial. The league is growing. The Golden State Valkyries are making an appearance. New money, new markets, and new narratives. On the surface, that ought to be a reason for joy. A sign of health is expansion. However, growth also brings with it more moving parts, conflicting interests, and chances for the already unstable power structure to change even more. According to rumors going around the league, Caitlin Clark's team is fully aware of the power they possess and may start putting formal requests in place that take that power into account. Private travel plans, security measures, schedule considerations that safeguard her availability for national broadcasts, and rest arrangements that guarantee she is fully recovered for the games that NBC most desires to highlight. Those requests from a player with Clark's level of expertise would have been laughed out of a league office meeting a year ago. According to reports, NBC executives may swiftly make the Commissioner's life extremely difficult if Clark's team expresses discontent with any part of the league's treatment of her. The current power structure looks like that. The Commissioner is no longer in charge of the room. The coordinator is her. She enables the interaction between the companies that monetize the value and the person who creates it. Although her agency oversees logistics, establishes regulations, and upholds the institutional structure, other parties hold the real leverage. Commissioner is still the title. The title's former power has subtly shifted. Not too long ago, there was an opportunity to make a different decision, where the Commissioner might have made a conscious public decision to stand on the right side of that history after realizing what Caitlin Clark signified for the league's whole future, not just for money and viewership. To stand up to the veterans when the physical targeting became unjustifiable, to protect her when it was uncomfortable, and to consider the long-term consequences of being left off the Olympic team rather than the immediate political gain of complying with the committee. The explosion we are currently hearing about behind closed doors is the sound of someone realizing the cost of that decision, which was not made. Everything ends up here. There was more to the NBC announcement than just a TV deal. It was the last component in a restructure that had been underway for more than a year. According to reports, Commissioner Cathy Engelbert is angry and outwitted, not because the market moved against her, but rather because she didn't recognize the direction of the market until it was too late to take advantage of it. Caitlin Clark did not use confrontation to topple the WNBA establishment. She achieved this through commercial domination, performance, and the kind of market validation that no league political system can match. She informed the establishment that she did not require their platform and declined the millions offered by the top league. Because of her, the biggest networks in the world are now spending billions to air a league that relied on subsidies for 25 years. After a season of targeted physical play, institutional quiet, and establishment gatekeeping, she emerged stronger than before. The veterans who insisted for months that she would face reality were correct. It did come to pass. Simply put, it did not arrive as they had anticipated. It came in the form of a network deal that turned their careers into a supporting role in the highlight reel of someone else. The WNBA is no longer a charitable endeavor. It's a real business with real money, real corporate partners, and real repercussions for poor choices. Additionally, you don't attack someone in business if they account for the vast majority of your commercial value. You don't attempt to reorganize them into a framework that no longer accurately represents reality. You either build around them or fall behind. Today, Cathy Engelbert is in charge of a league that she no longer fully controls, a locker room that is divided along lines she helped create, and a relationship with the media that has effectively caused her accountability to flow upward to corporate partners rather than downward to the teams and players she is supposed to be in charge of. The revolution was not self-announced. Protests, threats, or dramatic altercations in league headquarters did not accompany it. A broadcast contract was included. It arrived with an unmatched offer that was declined. It brought with it vacant stadia that abruptly filled up and jersey sales that broke all previous league records. Whether Cathy Engelbert can adjust to a setting she did not create or anticipate, or if the Caitlin Clark age will eventually claim her place as its most notable institutional casualty, is the final issue hovering over all of this. Although there are now no indications of adaptation, the power battle is far from over. There are already rumors that the Women's National Basketball Association is getting ready to play a big role in this. The details of what that entails for Clark, the veterans, and the league's future are still being worked out. You won't want to miss it when it does.